Welcome back, everyone, to the Flyin Lion Podcast. I want to thank Zach for being with us here tonight. Zach, how we doing?
Doing great. Just enjoying my time here before I leave for vacation this week. So I'm looking forward to it, especially after these past few games we've had.
It's a good time to get away in some aspects. FC Cincinnati had a little bit of a up and down week in some ways. A lot of figuring out to do is the best way to kind of describe it. In this episode, we're going to do a little bit of a review or recap of the Champions Cup round of 16 game against Monterrey. We'll give you a preview for the game on Thursday against Monterrey for the second leg. And then we'll get into a trivia question. I got a good trivia question for you, Zach. And then the second part of the episode, we're going to jump into some cards of the week, jersey swap of the week, and then we'll give you a preview of our game coming up against New England. So a lot to talk about tonight, even though, some of it isn't as fun in some ways, but honestly, it's good to kind of recap things and to see, maybe what went wrong or what we can do better with. The game on Thursday, though, Champions Cup, again, round of 16 against Monterrey, was just an unbelievable atmosphere, Zach. It really felt like a European Champions League game. You look over at the Monterrey supporters in the corner and they have smoke bombs and they have tons of flags. I mean, imagine that on a larger scale throughout the stadium. But I still feel like for a Thursday night game, it was just an awesome atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. It was a Thursday night game. You really had a pretty awesome showing considering how cold it was. Late at night Thursday. I know that with it, if it were to be on a weekend night, I mean, I think we would have gone all out, come with a tifo. I think we would have really brought everything out.
Do you think we
Uh,
do a Brandon Vazquez tifo?
oh hell no!
Yeah, man,
Who
I
would
don't
not?
know. It was interesting. I mean, they read the starting lineups differently for Champions Cup. We don't get an opportunity to say our players' last names. We don't get a sword pull, like we mentioned in a prior podcast. But at least for Monterrey, they read it like they normally, would for an away team. They did a kind of a little quick pause for Vasquez, and I heard more cheers than boos. I don't know if you thought the same thing.
I actually I don't think I was in my seat yet. I think was still
Okay.
in the bathroom line waiting. No,
Yeah.
honestly though, I think it's a good point. I think well, I don't think they don't put a lot of emphasis on that like opening like 10 minutes, right? With the national anthem where it's very
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. We do the U.S. anthem, and then Monterrey declines wanting the Mexican national anthem, is what we hear actually after the game, because we're all wondering, why we didn't get a Jamaican anthem for the previous game. But where they lack in the pregame stuff, they really hit you hard with 10 minutes of the players just standing on the field and playing the Champions Cup theme song. We got them just kind of awkwardly standing around and waiting for the game to start. I think in the last game I noticed that as well. But once we finally got things going, Zach, I was looking at our lineup and it was pretty solid. There was some question to whether we'd rotate or not with how many games we had. You see the inclusion of DeAndre Yedlin. I mean, that's the big thing that stood out for me is he comes in on Monday and he's a starter by Thursday. The guy had played 3 games prior with Inter Miami, played all 90 minutes, and had played in the back line before with, Miles Robinson, had played with Matt Miazga. So there's going to be at least a little bit of chemistry there. And in a big moment, a big game like this, DeAndre's played at the biggest of moments in Europe, and some in the MLS with the Sounders too. So to have him in the lineup was a big thing that I saw.
yeah, I mean, coming off that, I mean, he played on Saturday, I think it was, and then turned around Sunday, came to Cincinnati, signed on Monday, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the fastest turnarounds I think I've seen for one of our players, and then getting starting minutes, going into that Thursday match. I mean, it kind of goes into a little bit later talking points, but I mean, the fact that he even got a starting spot was pretty awesome. And I think
Pat
it
doesn't normally do that. Pat doesn't usually, a new player coming in, like we saw it with Oriano maybe, but usually there's a game where they're a sub or they come in off the bench or something. They don't usually start right away. And I think he played about 60 something minutes. and did pretty well, I felt like too. But on the flip side, Zach, we see you Kubo plays left wing back in this game. That was the other big piece I think that we saw in the lineup, but otherwise a normal lineup overall.
Yeah, I think the Kubo slot. I think Pat didn't really have much of any of a choice. I mean, he could have probably played Powell, but honestly, with the pace that Monterey play, I think Kubo's a better play. But really, I think he didn't want to play him there because I mean he's just had experience playing in that center mid role in the obviously past couple seasons, but then he's also got that attacking mindset that he's always had over at Gant, right? So he's just gonna fall into place, I guess, right there. So he
Right.
just fills the role to play.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking on Kubo, I think he did okay. We see it eventually, Brandon Vazquez scores a goal in the 24th minute and it comes down that side. There's a transition moment, and where I felt Monterrey was dangerous was in kind of quick moments in transition. They pieced together some passes and then would ding it out wide. They were really trying to exploit our wingbacks, and Kubo gets caught up high on this play. You see the Monterrey player take Murphy on one-on-one. He's kind of late to cover this. And then you see Brandon Vazquez do his work. The biggest thing that we had seen from him, even I would say last year and even the year before, was creating space in the box, making a run straight and then taking 2 feet off of the defender to create that opportunity. And you see him do this. I mean, I would have imagined our center backs would maybe potentially see him do this and react better to it. But he breaks away, gets some space. His back is to goal, which I'm going
Oh,
to say gives Roman maybe a little bit of leeway on this, but he puts a shot down that I think that Roman's got to do a little bit better with in some aspects. Again, with his back to goal and then turning around, like you don't know if he's going to go front post or back post, but just getting
yeah.
down quicker, getting more on it or pushing it out. I mean, is that what you saw with it?
I honestly like there were so many things that could have gone better on that play. It just knowing Matt, I mean, he criticizes himself probably pretty heavily on this. The fact that Vasquez was able to take a touch, turn all the way around and shoot in like literally probably maybe a yard from the six. I think it was. It was pretty close to the like six
Yeah.
box. The fact that he can do all that and then still put a shot on goal, on target, even like I, our defense needs to step that up
Yeah.
way more.
He knows how to score in TQL, man. That's the biggest thing that I took away is just he's comfortable in that environment.
Yeah,
You see him connecting well with some of the Monterrey players. That's another thing I took away is like you see his inclusion into the team as a striker, maybe as a new striker and having your wingbacks try to play you balls. Like you're not always familiar with the runs that you're going to make. Or hey, Brandon is kind of this guy that's going to run directly in and then kind of back out to create his opportunities, where Corey Baird or, Aaron Bupenza, there isn't as much of that chemistry early on in the season to know where they're going to make these runs. And
yeah,
for Brandon to create good chemistry, early on in the season and be able to find those moments, I mean, props to him. I know, again, this is not a Monterrey podcast or a Brandon Vazquez podcast, but it was a good moment from him. Again, I feel like we could have done better, like you mentioned, in a lot of
yeah,
different ways. But that was really, I would say, against the run of play in a lot of ways in the first half. I mean, we were commenting on that we had some decent chances. We sustained, I think, a little bit more of the possession in some aspects. Where they did well on was just, like I said, playing quickly. And playing out wide. I mean, they played with attacking wingers, so that stretched us a little bit. But that's kind of where they exploited it, and props to them.
yeah. I mean, Vasquez really didn't have much of a impact on the game besides that shot. And there's a header earlier in the match. Like
Right.
other than that, I think he got subbed out. Like
60, 70th minute or something like that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and he really didn't have anything to show the rest of the game. So it's like the those are the chances that you've got to make. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, both Monterey and the DC game. I mean,
That's an
our strikers
$8.5 million striker. I mean,
exactly.
you score in your half chances. What have I been saying in all of these podcasts is you get those chances and you score on them. So, I mean, going, I guess, kind of into the same thing as just Aaron Bupenza, right? On the same
Yeah.
aspect of, Boop gets an early chance in the first 6 to 8 minutes, and he gets a touch and tries to whip in a left curler shot, and it goes wide. So being able to finish those opportunities, obviously it's easier said than done. Now seeing 2 games in a row, you can harp on it a little bit more. But in preseason, he was putting them in. So it's really run a form. And I'm sure, all strikers go through this period where you lack confidence in some ways, and you just feel like no matter what you do, the ball's not going to go in. I know Corey Baird, same thing, just oodles of opportunities to score in this game, but just doesn't have that like final touch on the ball. You get these guys on a run together, and
Yeah.
it's 4 or 5-0 in this game before, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah. If you're not kicking it right at the goalie, like
yeah,
just a little bit either down on the ground or just a little bit to the left or right, and you're gonna have a goal. Like,
right. Yeah. And I don't know if it's, again, I think a lot of it is chemistry, but just having the confidence in front of goal, and they'll find their footing. I mean, it's early on in the season. If you
mhm.
get a time to where you have your striker not able to score goals, and now is the preferred time in some ways versus like in the playoffs. So
Yeah,
hopefully he can turn it around later on in the season, and I fully expect. I mean, he's got a good track record of scoring. He's probably been through times where he hasn't been able to finish, for 5, 6 games, but
right.
you get him on a run like he did in preseason, and we feel unstoppable. So don't let this small sample size kind of fool you for a long-term season in a way. Moving on from that, though, we get to later on in the match, Zach. Kind of an interesting situation. The ball gets kicked out towards the Bailey side. You think we have a corner, and then all of a sudden we're kind of watching some jostling going around, and all of a sudden you see Corey Baird just gets knocked down to the ground, and no idea at first as to, what's going on. You see later replays of him just getting, I think, a punch thrown to his neck.
Obliterated.
Yeah, I mean, just blatant. I don't know what that guy was thinking, but 70th minute though, I mean, that creates opportunities, going up a man, playing at home. We just have to be better at attacking, playing quickly, breaking teams down. I know, Monterrey plays back a little bit after that point, but they're down, one of their main center backs who went out on an injury in the first half. So exploiting, maybe not as experienced center backs in some ways, and just creativity, I think is what, I wish I would see a little bit more, especially up a man. We saw it last year in some aspects as well. I think in Nashville, was the only exception where we're up a man or even two at that point, actually. And we finally, capitalize on it. But we need to see that more consistently.
Yeah, I mean, through and through, that's where you really got to capitalize, extend that goal differential, especially earlier in the season like this. Like, I mean, I guess it's obviously Champions Cup, so like aggregate's important. So
Right.
you need to score at home. The fact that we have that 0-1 in the 70th minute, it's like you've got to at least put a goal in the back of the net. And really, with it being I mean, I think they were down their center back because he took an injury earlier in the match, and
Right.
then that red card. I mean, it's good for us for next match, but you know, you've got to still finish the game out and see to it to make some more chances, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and what's interesting is we say they're down a center back, but let's be honest. I mean, Monterrey doesn't have a salary cap or, anything. They can bring in a backup center back who's probably MLS level in some ways. So,
And I think we were saying their salary is at like 95 million
oh, on
versus
transfer market, it's rated at like, yeah, 95 million, and ours is like 45. So, I mean, the discrepancy is clearly there, but yeah, I mean, we have how many free kicks and corners in this game? I remember, a free kick outside of the box where we try a set play that no one really seemed to be on the same page about. I think the training ground plays, the dead ball situations just have to be better. I mean, those are things that you can practice on, on a weekly basis in some aspects, but with 5 new players, possibly some more with subs and whatnot, there is still a little bit of figuring it out, and I'm sure they'll work on that. I mean, clearly, if we saw it, they're seeing that. But we have 11 shots. I forget how many even on goal. Probably like what, 5 or 6 of those were even on goal, but just have to be better and find the back of the net. Like you said, especially at home, in that atmosphere, especially in a situation where now you go to Monterrey and it's a away setting. You're playing in Mexico for the first time in your history.
It's a 55,000 crowd stadium, like
Yeah, I mean,
the best team in Liga MX. Like,
you got to think a win. I mean, obviously, is what you really wanted in that first leg, but you also come out of this game saying, but we look so good. We could do it. We could do it in Monterrey. I was going to look, though, we'll get into the preview of this game on Thursday. Second leg. So again, we're down 0-1 on aggregate. So we need 1 goal to tie to go to extra time. Without conceding, or scoring 2 without them conceding, and then we would move on away goals. But we're going to play in altitude, Zach. Having I think 6, possibly 7 or 8 games in a short amount of time, going to another country you never played in as a team, going to play in altitude. So their stadium sits at 1,700 feet. With view of the mountains behind it. I mean, it's gorgeous. So it's going to be really cool, I'm sure, for the players to go to versus the cold. But but altitude changes the way you play.
no, absolutely, and playing at a Mexican stadium is extremely different than any MLS stadium. I don't know if there's many that you could compare to. Maybe LAFC adjacent.
Sure.
Like I think really I don't know how. I'm curious to see what the stat is actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, like how many like MLS teams play in Mexico or have played in Champions Cup or Leagues
Sure.
Cup, and see what that record is, because I'd love to see it. But
I'm sure it's not great.
no, not at all. And I mean, it goes to show too. Like earlier in the Champions Cup, I mean, all the MLS teams were in the regular season. They didn't. None of them had any wins, but they were playing well in Champions Cup. So I think a lot of teams are putting more emphasis on Champions Cup, and I think with Pat Noonan coming in on Thursday, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to watch it, but um, I think with Boop and Oriano, curious about how Obi is with that knock that he took against DC,
Right.
which we'll
Good
talk
shout.
about. Um, I, it leaves me a little worried. I'm not going to lie. Just seeing how there might be a little slight rotation in that midfield. But other than that, I think it'll be just as close of a match, in my opinion. I think we had way more chances than I actually. I was very surprised on how well we played against Monterrey, given the circumstances.
I mean, if they're a giant in Mexico leading the league, leading CONCACAF, in rankings, I think we stand up pretty well, even with 5 new starting players. I mean, the way we played was just as good, if not better, in some ways. Obviously we don't get that finishing touch, but you like to think that your team looks pretty dang good, even though you're new, and you have all these chemistry issues, if you want to call it. But if you can put it together, I mean, the talent's there on paper. They look great too, but to see them play, in that setting, says a lot. To see how they go into Monterrey and play, will really say a lot about this team and coming together. You rely on Lucho. Really, you have to rely on Lucho. He's played in Mexico. He's been in these moments. He knows what the atmosphere is going to be like, and he's your captain. So really, feed off of him and his energy and what he's going to bring to you. In moments where you're going to be stressed, where you're going to be pressed, when everyone is yelling every sort of insult at you, lean on Miazga, getting the guys going, lean on Lucho saying, let's go, we got this.
Yeah,
So I'm excited to see that. But
keep that momentum.
yeah, absolutely. And so, like we talked about, going from Thursday and then to this past Sunday, we played DC United. So really the response, you kind of have in some ways a deflating loss where you felt like you could have won. And then you go to Sunday, and how do you respond from that? Do we play a rotated roster or starting 11 like we kind of thought we would, and we ended up doing it. But to see that response, we end up tying, 0-0, another 0-0 tie at home for the MLS. But yeah, Zach, we had a little bit rotation. We have Santos in for Boop. We had Kip Keller in for Murphy, as they kind of leaked in the match day graphic. Alvis Powell for Yedlin, and then Oriano's back. And shout out for him for being back too. I mean, I can't imagine again what he's been going through, but within like a week, to have him back was special for the Sunday game, and I'll touch on him in a little bit.
I really you didn't you kept saying it the match and after the match, and I wanted to touch on it a little bit because you said, I mean, coming out of the Monterrey game, what they do in this match is gonna really define the rest of the season. And then they come out and pull a 0-0 draw. It's like, okay, guys, like we're gonna do it again for this next Saturday, like or Sunday, like I I mean, I guess a 0-0 draw. I mean, I don't know what to make of it as far as like, I mean, it's important. I think that we obviously don't get scored against, but
Right.
at the same time, those old early matches, I think I said it in a previous episode, like those early games when you're in a cup, being able to draw 0-0 or, even any sort of draw, but not losing. I think that's really critical in this state that we're in. So really I'm not worried, but I'm not excited, I guess. Like
Sure.
it's just
The response was
complacent.
decent from some aspects of the thought, like you create a lot of chances still. You're getting opportunities to score and to win games. So it's not like, you know, 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we had one shot on goal. It's not that, but it's maybe just not all the way there yet. And I think
Yeah.
that for me was okay, they responded as not like deflated, maybe tired. I'd say tired is fair to say. I mean, understandably, you go from Thursday, an emotional game, to Sunday and bouncing back. But you have some new guys that come in, and you hope to build off of those players. And again, one of them is Oriano and how he played. And again, I'll touch on that here in a little bit. I don't want any surprises on that, but he played well. And Kip Keller, I felt like did pretty serviceable too in some ways as well. Zach, a big thing that happens in the 32nd minute though, Obi goes down with a contusion. We see him get kind of hit in the leg on this tackle. I think Obi gets there quicker than what the ref thought he did. Is it a foul? I don't know about that, but yeah, he tries to play on, and I think what was the funny thing that you pointed out about it is it's his shins. It's always his shins, but I think last year it was his toe, but I think you're right. Other than that, it's always him getting kicked in the legs. I've never seen him wear shin guards, or if they are, they're tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I considering how rough and, you know, aggressive he plays, I don't know how he doesn't just put those massive like center back like shin
Right.
guards go up to
Right.
your knees. Like I I'm honestly surprised he doesn't get more injured from his fitness and like hamstring, etc.
Right.
I am actually just a knock. I'd much rather, I think anybody would have a knock than an actual, I guess, twist,
Yeah.
sprain, etc.
It doesn't feel great to get kicked or like dead legged or anything, but I'd prefer that, like you said, over a pulled hammy or,
Right.
any of that any day. I felt like, Pinto comes into the game in the 33rd minute though, and plays pretty serviceable overall in his spot. I think Pat even said in his post game comments that like we needed him to be in there and be similar to what Obi brought.
Good
There's
point. Yeah.
maybe a little bit lack of cohesion between him and Buka because they haven't had a lot of minutes together in that spot. But yeah, I think they did pretty well. I felt like early on in the match we created some decent opportunities, but DC seemed to be a little bit more dangerous, even without, we've, didn't even mention it until now, without Benteke, without their main striker, their big physical guy. I mean, they end the half with 8 shots to R3. And you feel like in some ways they had some decent chances. I don't know if I would say it was like testing chances. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, they were pushing their luck, I would say, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
for sure.
I was gonna say, I think that was one of the worst halves of soccer I think we've ever seen. Um, like you said, I mean, just what we've been repeating is just that lack of cohesion. I mean, it's clearly visible. Just missed passes. Like, I don't like knocking on him much because I think he does a good job, but I think Buka, he's that real important connection from the back line to the mid or
Right.
to the
Strikers.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could tell that he just either there was an off match or something, but he just wasn't connecting his passes as well as you expected. Like it seemed like they were bad giveaways. I think you could see it. I don't know if it was the first half or
Hmm.
the second when I think Matus Click came just pressured him and he lost the ball like right at the top of the box.
Right.
And you know, obviously our center backs were there, but I mean, I don't think they even got to Click before he shot. But yeah, those instances where it's like boom, boom, and they have the ball and are gone on a breakaway because he's always that closest one to the center backs, and
Sure.
rest history.
Yeah. I mean, and where last year you had a lot of 1-2 touches, then pass, or they kind of knew where they were going. Now you get guys that are on the ball 1, 2, 3 touches, and they're like, I don't know, and we'll play it back, and then you swung it around the back line to Roman, and then you'd play it out to, Kip Keller or whoever. And they didn't really have options. You didn't see a ton of running between the forwards, a lot of cohesion, or creating where one striker checks to the other one, runs behind. They were doing very similar runs, or in some aspects they weren't really creating those. So the center backs, look forward. They're trying to probe. They're trying to find Buka. They're trying to find, Santos or Baird. They don't have it. They turn around. They play it back to the center back. And then after a while, they just got sick of it and said, screw this, and just would play it over the top by the end of the game. They were trying to play more direct, I think, obviously to score, but you kind of go away from your plan of what you had last year. We did well against Monterrey, breaking them down, playing quickly, creating those interchanges, 1-2 touch. But like you said, I mean, it was just a lack of sharpness in some ways where passes go awry, or guy makes a run and you play it behind him. They just have to be a little bit more clinical in those situations. I think that it was good that Pat brought Boop and Yedlin on in the 56th minute. We needed to have a little bit more of familiarity on the field. Maybe with Bupenza and Baird, I was hoping to get a little bit more, and you see that Bupenza has a clear chance in the 84th minute. Oriano just puts an incredible ball in a couple different times, but it falls to Bupenza, who, I mean, I want to say just tries to get anything on it to score, but you see the DC guy just flying across. The keeper made a great save on that play too.
Yeah, you just want to cry just seeing like I feel like anybody in that moment felt like they could have scored there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it as a striker, that is like your dream thing. Just pops right in front of you. Just blast it. Like don't be pretty. Don't be like it. Like you said, it didn't seem like it was that hard of a shot. Like just looks like a normal pass into the goal. But I think in some of those instances, you just really need to like put a screamer on it.
Just, I mean, bomb it into the net at that point. If it deflects off the guy in, it deflects in. It's a goal. But I think he was just kind of reaching in some ways and try to get anything he could on it, which is what you ask of a striker.
Yeah.
Overall impressions, I mean, we end 0-0, and you're kind of disappointed because, I mean, obviously you want to win, and DC hadn't looked great up to that point. You're at home, so there's points on the table early on in the season that you're losing out on. I think we both said it, and I'm going to just say it real quick, is forward cohesion, getting the guys to play together as strikers and not on complete opposite sides of the field. I told you that after the game. I think they can be better with having Lucho, if he's going to drift out wide, knowing where the forwards can go then to occupy the space to make him look good or make runs for him to play him through. Finishing opportunities as well. I know you'll probably talk a little bit more about the forward stuff, but the defense, man, has done well. I mean, they haven't given up a goal in MLS like play. The run of play, I should say. They had the PK against them, but they've done well. And I mean, at home, that's what you want. You have Kip Keller come in and does, again, serviceable. Maybe it's not, or I guess it's without their striker, Ben Teke, but I mean, you're happy overall. You don't give up a goal.
Yeah, I think we tend to not talk about defense enough, especially on this team. I looked at FootMob, and Miles and Kip are a number 2 and 3 on the highest rated on our team. So it's like
Pretty good. Pretty
we're
good.
I, especially with Kip. Kip is really showing up this season, and I'm really proud of him. Happy for him. Like
Yep.
I think he's going to be our I'm not going to say it, but next Haglin, right? So
A lot of people are saying there's a lot of comparisons.
there is. It's the hair, I think.
The
but
hair and yeah, the way they
but
play is similar in some ways. A little
yeah,
sporadic on the ball at times when they're playing it, but
they're
overall,
tippy
like,
taps.
yeah, but good in the air. I feel like Kip's done a really good job in the air. But I mean, speaking of defense, I'll give you our trivia question of the week here, Zach. FC
Absolutely.
Cincinnati has 180 minutes at home without giving up a goal in MLS play. What is the MLS record of consecutive minutes at home without allowing a goal?
Minutes. So I can't do that much math in my head.
90 minutes in a
Um,
game.
no, I know, but like, it could be like I guess we'll go 450.
All right, 450. I'm going to do a special one. I guess I'll give you the second part was the FCC record for consecutive minutes in general. So not at home, but just in general. Stay tuned for that one. I'll give you that one at the end as well. We're going to take a break here and we'll be right back. Hey, FC Cincinnati fans. We are pumped to share our new sponsor, Peak Cocktails.
I'm sipping on the passion fruit margarita, which is so spicy and it makes me feel like I'm on the beach.
Ooh, that sounds great. I'm drinking the blood orange spritz, which has a great subtle ginger flavor coming from its scientifically formulated recipe to promote exercise recovery, enhance relaxation, and support a better night's sleep.
Ryan, that's exactly why I love them. Their cocktails are designed to fit seamlessly into your health conscious lifestyle, giving you the enjoyment of a delicious adult drink without the downsides of alcohol.
Guys, next time you are looking for that post-workout drink or an afternoon pick-me-up, grab a Peak Cocktail. Visit them at www.peakcocktails.com and use the code Flyin Lion at checkout to get 20% off your first order. Zach, enjoy your drink. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for listening to our sponsor, Peak Cocktails, which Zach and I are sipping on tonight. We're here talking about a little FC Cincinnati competition congestion, meaning MLS and Champions Cup. We've just had a lot of games in a short amount of time. Ultimately, I mean, one loss out of like all these games is not bad, like at all. I'm looking at a stat from this past week, though, Zach. Teams that played in Champions Cup matches went 1 win, 1 draw, and 3 losses this weekend, scoring 8 goals and conceding 13. So it really tells you that, when you play these midweek games, especially early on in the season and against teams that are, into their season halfway, it's going to be tough on you, especially with travel and whatnot too. So, towards the end of the podcast here, we're going to talk a little bit about our preview of the New England game for this coming weekend, but that's going to be a huge talking point. Is just going from, Mexico and then all the way up to New England, Thursday to Sunday. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. But Zach, I was interested. What is your card of the week?
Yeah, the besides our play, there's not been a lot of things to knock on, but I'm gonna be a little critical this time. Scoreboard time. So there's a scoreboard countdown for on the scoreboard for when the game starts. It's what you would expect, right? But no, it's when the warm-ups end, and it's not when the game starts. So Mark and I were rushing to go get a beer, and we're like, oh no, we have like a minute left, and we're just getting in line. So you see everybody in line, right? So
Right.
it's like it's the longest lines of the night right before the what you would expect the match to start. But no, we rushed and it's ends up being another 15 minutes after the warm-ups that you had to wait. So just really, really dumb, but I just wish they just made it so it was the countdown to the actual kickoff and not to warm-ups being over.
Yeah, I mean the clarity on that, like before the games, and then for me is like at halftime, or like 45 minutes or 90 minutes. Like put the extra time on the board like you were telling us you would. I mean, I know it's the situation because we don't have the real refs, but like the real ref doesn't control the board. Like you can show it on like the screen. Like I don't care if it's a replacement ref and they're keeping it on their watch and there might be a discrepancy, is like how far off could it possibly be from what's on his watch, as a replacement ref versus one of the real ones, real ones, if we want to say it. Why not start that now? Why not put it on? And I actually saw even at the 45th minute, they started to do it and then they went back down to 45. I
Oh,
don't know
no
if
kidding. I missed that.
yeah, I don't know if you caught that. I think somebody was like, "Oh, wait, we have to actually go back to this and then show, +6, but not count it up." So
Yeah.
scoreboard time is a good shout, Zach.
I can I add a little comment onto that? I just feel like also like when you see the score, like the extra time on the scoreboard, I feel like more fans would get into it more because like you don't know what the time is left, so I feel like
Right,
more chance and more excitement would happen, pushing the players, to play better in those final
right.
minutes.
Yeah,
But it's a little lost on me because of the whole waiting in line and not and rushing and getting to my seat in time.
you're just trying to maximize your time to go get a drink.
Exactly. That's all it is.
Zach, I'm
How
gonna
about
give you
you?
my card of the week was what came out before the match on Sunday. So unfortunately, Laurel Pfahler, one of our local FC Cincinnati reporters, lost her credentialing for 2 weeks. I'm not gonna act like I know what's going on with this situation. But at least from what she's putting out, I feel bad. I mean, in a lot of ways, it is her livelihood, I believe. So, she's losing the ability to go in, interview these players, interview the coaches, being at the practices, like a lot of outlets had said, the Bengals have what, 8, 9 people covering the team at all times, and being at practices, being at press conferences. And FC Cincinnati has, two outside of the team. So for one of them to be gone, even for 2 weeks, but with a huge matchup with Monterrey and not having that coverage, I mean, that's huge. And, I feel for her. Again, I don't know the full situation as to what's going on. I just wish this situation gets resolved quickly. And I know a lot of people around the fan base are, behind Laurel, and we're behind her here too. We hope we get a little bit more clarity, to what's going on as well. But we support her and all the great work that she does covering this team. We can definitely say we've been to the point where we've, asked her for comments on things or clarity, in certain situations. I can think of even last week, and just understanding as a fan better and to be able to tell you guys, the listeners, more information. That's why it's important. That's why this situation matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Laurel is a fantastic writer, so you should go follow her on Patreon. I mean, she writes great stories. Her mailbag, like everything, very informative. If you really could spare a couple dollars, I definitely say go support her if you can.
Queen City Press, check her out as well. I know they do a podcast over there. We support all the FCC podcasts. We love this community. We're all here for the same purpose. We love this team. Zach, moving on to your jersey swap, though, I'm interested to see who you had this week.
Yeah, it's another tough one. I mean, I think I texted you earlier. I mean, one of the hardest jersey swaps to choose, and you know, I couldn't go with the one that you chose, so I just went with the I guess next best option was DeAndre Yedlin. He didn't really play much in DC, but he got some minutes. Played most of the game on against Monterrey, if not the full 90. I can't remember if it was
He
it was
played,
a
I
late.
think, like 60 or 70, I believe.
Was it okay? Um, but yeah, I would say the fact that like I said, Sunday or Monday he was signed and he's playing with us on Thursday. The fact that he can, just pick right up and play. I mean, I don't think left or a wing back is his preferred position. I think it's probably like a right back or left back or outside back, but wing back. I mean, I think it's a very complicated, complex position, and with Pat Noonan, he has high expectations, and I think Yedlin, for what it was, he was able to play that position, and he played it pretty well. It seemed like every time he was in, the other team actually really tried to play on the opposite side of the field of him. I think it was really, really noticeable in that aspect. But I think he tends to do a lot more overlapping runs. I've noticed. I mean, you got what Kubo, Powell, Oriano. I mean, of those three, or I guess with DeAndre Yedlin, of those four, I think Yedlin really had the most like forward passes, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. It seemed like he did a lot more through balls to both Baird and Boop when they were on the field. But yeah, I think he for what it was, I think he did pretty well.
I would, tend to agree. The first 20 minutes in the Monterey game, like we went down Yedlin's side so much and we did really well at it. I think getting him through, getting him working with Lucho, and then having, like you said, Yedlin play balls through to either him or to the forwards was a really important aspect of our game that, like you said, maybe it was a Monterey thing and how they adjusted where the play was. But after the first 20, 25 minutes, the game shifted to the other side and you didn't really see too much from him, but he didn't let anything past him either. Like I said, Monterey plays with high attacking like wingers. And so for Yedlin having to get up and be in the attack, but also be mindful to get back, I mean, for him to switch into that position, I mean, he played more of a traditional right back at Inter Miami. So yeah, I think he did great in filling in. I'd like to see him continue to put more crosses in, give our guys opportunities to score, in the box. And I think he'll be able to start doing that more as we get more understanding of runs and where guys are going. But DeAndre knows ball, man. He's a player. I love, his press conferences. What was it? His introductory conference that they like talked to him about was just awesome. Saying like
Awesome. Yeah.
Lucho is, the other good Argentinian number 10 in the MLS. I mean, that was awesome to see. So DeAndre knows ball
He's one of those players that you hate playing against him, but you love it when he's on your team.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Zach, my jersey swap was Oriano. I'm gonna go with him. Just he was in the Sunday game. I really wanted to shout him out because he played all 90 minutes, especially under the circumstances, and losing his father the week before. He was playing inspired, and you could tell. I mean, early on in the game, he completed so many dribbles and created so many good opportunities. He had the most completed dribbles in the whole match with 5, most recoveries on our team with 10, most crosses at 7, and then he was second in expected assists. He was creating so many good chances, and that's what we really wanted out of him being a Barrial replacement. Like Pat mentioned in his post-game conference, like this guy is filling into the spot where he's only played, I think, like once or twice in his whole career. And he's coming in and like leading the team in completed dribbles and recoveries and like putting good crosses in. Like those are opportunities to score that if your forwards aren't playing well, at least your wingbacks are creating. And seeing him maybe a part of more of the free kicks in the corners is, I think, the next step. Letting him do more of the Barriel-esque type left foot shots, I think I would love. But we'll see. I think he took one corner, Zach, didn't he, in the last game?
I think so. Yeah, I'd love to see him take more set pieces. As we know, Acosta usually tends to shorten his passes, but
Yeah.
I I think you need that variety. I I think he's a better what is it like free kicks are like more closer to the midfield that
Oh,
come in
sure.
into
Yeah.
the box as opposed to Acosta because I don't think Acosta can get much oomph on it.
Right.
I'm not trying to knock him, but I feel like especially with Oriano, I mean his crosses. I think like you were saying, him and Yedlin are gonna they're gonna top the MLS with most crosses. I feel like this year if
Yeah.
they both keep in and stay with minutes.
I need to see our guys in the box fight for the balls like on the headers. I know Baird
Yeah.
was, he had another point blank quick opportunity that I think the keeper makes a good save on, but you just have to have somebody go and fight for that ball. And Bupenza, and sometimes like he will go after it, but he won't like fully like dive at it. I mean, if you're the striker, you got to go, man. You got to put everything on the line to get that ball in the back of the net. And I've seen it a little bit with Barrett. I got to see it a little bit more from Bupenza. Look at what Vazquez does. I mean, he's at the top of the 18 and he'll flick his head back and it'll go in the goal. I mean, that's what you need up top. You need somebody, if you're going to play with wing backs that are going to cross the ball in, you got to have that. I really liked, and I think you were going to get into it a little bit, but how different Oriano plays. I mean, he's Barrial 2.0 in some ways, but he's different. He takes players on more, and we don't have, other than Lucho, another guy to create out of nothing. You know, and you're in situations in your own half that you're trying to get out of. You have him to get out of those pressure situations and then create a quick counterattack from nothing.
Yeah, I when as you're talking, I feel like Halsey is what Oriano
It's true.
is kind of going towards. Like
Yeah,
I've noticed between the two, they really like to go to that touch line and then pass it back, or pass it just directly across. I think they both take on defenders very similarly. I think less so Halsey with the invertedness with him taking a shot, but I
sure.
think he's still. Um, I think that's what Pat Noonan envisions in him.
Yeah, I could see Halsey at some point sliding in, whether it's coming off the bench, but he's going to have to beat out Yedlin on the right wing back to be able to play that spot consistently. I real quickly wanted to just do a honorable shout out for jersey swap for Dado. Just in seeing him in limited minutes here recently, but I felt like the guy has done well with the minutes that he's had in creating opportunities. Every time the dude comes in because he cut his hair, I always think it's Halsey. Like, I think I mentioned that to you, is like, oh, Halsey's coming in the game. And then I'm like, Dado, like, oh, wait, he cut his hair. All right, cool. But yeah, I mean, he had that shot late on in the game, almost created a goal out of nothing. At some point, Zach, do we say, does Dado start taking over the starting spot? I don't know where. But if he's
Fair.
playing well, you gotta play the hot foot, I guess, if your offense isn't clicking. I mean, the guy's on I'm sure a ton of confidence right now. He scored his first FCC goal. He's actually getting more consistent minutes, like we saw Pinto kind of break through last year on sub appearances. But the next step is, hey, he's 19, he's raw, he's got all this talent now. How consistently can he find the field? And that, I think that's similar to what you had in a lot of Philly guys in the past. Is they were so talented in their starting 11 and they had so many young players like that would start anywhere else, but our team is so stacked essentially. But at some point, if you're struggling, I think there's a shout out there for Dado in some ways to find some more minutes.
At what point do you make that decision? Does Dado have to start scoring goals, start making assists, or is it just the fact that he's making more chances than say
Sure.
Baird or Santos? Like what, in your opinion, I guess, what's your thought on that?
Based on fit, I think, if you feel comfortable in practice seeing him play in, let's say, a Baird position, and he is constantly creating these opportunities that maybe you're not getting as much from Baird in the moment, then try him out there. I mean, what does it hurt for one game to see him start in a different position? He plays an attacking mid role, so I don't know if he fits in as well in Buka's spot, to be honest, but as a forward that kind of floats freely, having a false nine, maybe with him, where him and Lucho can interchange, where Lucho goes up into the attack more and plays more like a striker, having Dado kind of play back a little bit, but then they can interchange those positions would be so cool. I mean, it reminds me of Bernardo Silva in some ways for Manchester City. I mean, the guy plays like everywhere in the attack, but contributes in so many ways, but he's really slick on the ball.
That'd be nasty.
Yeah, I mean, they're both like him and Lucho are similar builds in some ways. I think Dado's a little bit bigger. I don't want to
Yeah,
slight him on that, but yeah, he's a raw talent, but he's coming into his form. I really think there is a shout in the future to see him play more minutes. Maybe not in Monterrey, this coming Thursday, but in future MLS games coming up. But speaking of future MLS games, did you like that transition, Zach?
oh,
We have a game this coming Sunday against New England in New England. So like I mentioned, we'll play Thursday. The team will probably come home and then make a quick trip up to Boston, outside of Boston, I should say, because they don't really have a stadium in Boston. But it's always interesting playing the New England Revolution. At least in the past years, when you have Bruce Arena, we've not been good, Zach. I think this is probably the worst win percentage that Pat's had, or even the team has had. Um, New England is 0-3 this year, though. They're under Caleb Porter. They have a new coach. Not a great start, but they're playing at home. They've done fairly well in Champions Cup, and we're playing on turf. So that is always a tough thing, and I'll have a little bit more to say on that. But what are your initial thoughts?
FC Cincinnati hates Caleb Porter.
True.
We're just gonna,
That's true. That's true.
I'm just gonna say that outright. I can't stand playing any of his teams. I mean, I think he was with the Timbers for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Back then, nobody liked playing the Timbers. Then went to Columbus Crew. Obviously, that's a no go. I
Right.
think that really solidified my hatred. I'm not going to go hatred, but my dislike for the man.
Sure.
He's just a really good coach. I mean, he's every team he's coached over the years. I mean, they've always come out big.
He's
They're
good in these bad. Like I feel like he's a good bad coach. Like he'll have one good year. Like they won in Portland and then they were not great. And then they won in Columbus and then they weren't that great.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, I think that's it. This is the not good year for the New England Revs. I mean, 0-3. It's against everything they've done the last 3 years. I think they weren't
Supporter Shield like 2 year like 2022,
yeah,
2021.
one of the highest like
2021, I think. Yeah.
I think yeah, and I think I can't remember their coaching history, but they've always been pretty decent in my opinion. They're always a tough team to play, especially on turf, like you said. But um, Carlos Gill, fantastic player. He's one to look out for on their team. But really, I mean, I'm trying to remember the other gentleman up top. Is it Berkey? Is Berkey on their team?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't
What?
think he's on there anymore.
There's a B player, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think they had a foreign striker they brought in. FC Cincinnati fans might recognize this name though. Ian Harkes plays for New England Revolution. That is John Harkes, our former coach's son. He actually plays a lot of minutes. He was playing at Dundee United, Zach, before he came to New England. But just an interesting kind of FC, interconnection there, if we want to call it that. While you're looking up that striker, I just wanted to comment that we dominated them in preseason. This was the only team that we played twice. We beat them both times pretty handedly. But anytime you go up to New England, like we're saying, even if the crowd, I hate to like slide them, isn't like always the greatest. I mean, they do bring it sometimes, but not like as consistently recently. But going from Thursday again in Mexico, time change, elevation to back home, then back up, to Boston to play on turf, different surface. In away games, Zach, this is interesting for FC Cincinnati and MLS history. In away games on turf, we are 2-6-6. So just not fantastic at all.
No, not at all. It's Giacomo Vrioni.
Oh, Veroni. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, Albania.
Good call. I mean, they do have some decent players. They lost, who is it? Gustavo Bo from last year.
Well,
He was a
that's
he
who I
was
was
a
thinking.
solid guy. Um, but yeah, I mean, go figure they would like figure it out this game against us. It just seems to always be that way. But I mean, they lost 4-1 to Atlanta over this past weekend, and it was on turf, so they should have been like prepared to play on turf too. But yeah, I'm interested to see how we line up. Biggest thing that I'm gonna, look out for honestly is Thursday to Sunday. Do we play a rotated squad? Um, After coming out with two draws at home, winning on the road, like does he like go for it on Sunday to just keep up in the MLS? Or I mean, obviously he's gonna put his best foot forward, Pat, that is for Thursday's game, but who's going to be left for Sunday then to play? I feel okay with Kip Keller, filling in maybe for a Miazga in this game, and doing okay. But offensively, like who is our depth pieces we can rely on is really what I'm waiting to see.
Absolutely. I think you have a couple things there. Like Buka never played on turf, I'm assuming. That's going to be
True.
an interesting.
Yeah, good
If he
call.
does, I don't know. With him possibly traveling to Monterrey.
Right.
Um, you also got with rotation with I mean Yedlin
Hmm.
on the left, and then you've also got well you mentioned the what was it? Oh, I was going to say in the preseason. I don't know if you mentioned that yet, but
Yeah, the preseason we had just dominated them.
dominated them,
Right.
and I think we had heavily rotated squad then, and even then, I think we came out on top, and I think I think you're going to see a lot of young youth people playing. I think just based off New England's record so far this year and how they've been playing,
Right.
uh, I don't know if it's just with Caleb Porter and their system or what, but I'm curious to see. I'd love to see Dado get more minutes, like you
This would be
said.
a good game for him to come in and do well. Maybe even Halsey just to really start running at guys and create opportunities. Play a little bit more free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have a little bit more. Take the breadth of the field,
Hmm.
because they're playing on the Patriots, so it's a pretty decent sized field if I remember correctly. So really play through that midfield and just dump it wide for crosses. I think that's a good strategy. But I don't know how their defense plays. Honestly, I'm not familiar with their defense.
Yeah, they used to have like Andrew Farrell, some of the longtime MLS guys. Honestly, yeah, I'm not really sure, a lot about their defense, but hopefully our offense is better than them. Let's just say that, or creates more chances. I think you do see a little bit more of the young guys sprinkled in. Maybe Lucho gets subbed out this game for Dado, coming off of Thursday to Sunday and playing on turf. Maybe Obi the same with his leg injury. Maybe does he not play Thursday but plays Sunday? I could see that as a situation or the opposite. If you really absolutely have to play him, Thursday to try to win and move on. But I don't envy Pat for this early season situation with all these games. He's done well, in my opinion, so far with weathering that and getting good pieces on, but just continuing to create cohesion. I mean, that is the biggest thing. But that will come with time. I mean, playing with each other, you replace 5, 6 pieces in some ways, in different player styles. Maybe your system is the same or your formation is the same, but guys that are filling into those spots play a little bit differently this year. So how can we adapt to that is really what I'm interested to see. Zach, any closing thoughts before I give you the trivia question and answer?
No, I think we're good. We covered a lot of content this fine evening.
Absolutely.
Thankful for the daylight savings. Glad that it's now
That's right.
officially light after eight
Yeah.
o'clock. So
Yeah, I
enjoying
agree.
that.
So again, our trivia question of the week was that FC Cincinnati has 100 minutes at home without giving up a goal in MLS play to start this year. What is the MLS record of consecutive minutes at home without allowing a goal? Zach, you were in the neighborhood of, I believe, like 400. Was that correct?
450. So that's like 5 games.
Okay. So this is interesting. In 2000, the Kansas City Wizards had 817 minutes consecutively at home without giving up a goal, which is just impressive.
Wow.
Quick maths on that. I mean,
That,
what is
that
that?
that's 9 matches.
That's pretty impressive.
That is
Yeah.
insane.
I mentioned to you that FC Cincinnati has a record, at least in general, for consecutive minutes without giving up a goal. The FC Cincinnati record was actually last year, 317 minutes without allowing a goal, and that was a span of it was March 18th through April 15th that they did not give up a single goal.
That's like
And
early
so
season.
yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, we're almost talking about this time now. And even back then the defense was pretty stout. we hope that we can stay that way. I mean, I think our defense is juggernauts. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're playing at such a high level as we would expect with the guys that we have. Um, we just got to score now. That's the name of the game, and it'll come. Give it time, and I think we'll get there. It reminds me in some ways of Columbus in last year. Maybe we bring in a really big striker mid-season, and by then we create a little bit more cohesion. But I'm hopeful overall. Obviously, not the result we wanted in 2 games, but hopeful is the biggest thing I'll take away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just one last thing. I mean, like we said last season, we were able to trickle out those goals that really had that, it was a neck and neck for most of the match, but we had that goal in the back of the net, and that just gave us the points that we needed to get up in the table. And it's these matches here that you're seeing where we need to capitalize on it, and where that team you'll see them as a one supporter shield winner versus 2, 3, 4 depth table.
Absolutely right. I mean, this is where Lucho won his MVP award last year. In games where it was 0-0 or 1-1, and he gets the game-winning goal. And that's the only thing we created that night, but we got the goal and we get the 3 points. You're exactly right. That's why we did so well last year, is just having that little bit of magic. So hopefully we can get that little bit of magic in this coming week. It'll be again a tall task in Monterrey. But I'm here for it. I'm hoping by next week we have 2 wins to talk about. But Zach, thanks for joining me tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely on for 2.